Hey, good morning. I am Mike. I am one of the pastors here. And before we get started off today, I need to give a message to our online community out there. So you people right there that I'm talking to, what I need to do is I just needed to apologize real quick. Because last week, man, I thought it was an awesome message. And nobody's ever going to hear it unless you were here. Because I had a little issue. It was my fault. I messed something up. And I wasn't able to put that out online. But in that tragedy came a good event, because one thing that we are doing, and we've been talking about it forever, but it wasn't until I screwed something up real bad, is we're going to start putting our messages out on Facebook Live every week, so I can make sure that I can capture that those people, because we have people that watch week after week that are a part of our family, even though they can't make it in these doors every week. And I just wanted to say real quick that we love you. We're doing our best to get this out to you. And man, you feel free to contact us with anything that you have. Just go on our website. My information to email me is there. You can email me directly. There's places, if you have prayer requests, you can put that information in. But we truly do think of you as a part of this family, even if you're not able to walk in these doors because of geographic reasons, or some of us even get to utilize that whenever we're gone for a weekend. So those will be available. The goal is we're doing a test this week. We're not putting this one on Facebook Live, but starting next week, the goal is we start doing that. So I'm excited about that. It's something we've talked about doing for about 2 years, and it just took me flubbing up in order to actually get us to get to that point. So, man, I hope, though, that you are ready for today, because I am fired up about this last week in this series. You can't imagine. Whenever I emailed the notes out to people, I'm like, guys, get ready, because today is going to be like no other day we've had in here. Today's message, I'm so excited about. And I'd encourage you to be participative in this experience. If you didn't bring your participative pants, you can probably find some under your seat. Just slip them on real quick. But if something resonates with you, say amen, clap, holler, whatever it is, man. Because today's message is going to be a message like no other that we've had here before. So we've spent the last weeks talking about this war that we face in our lives. This war that comes through these outside interferences, but a lot of times those things that we have and those issues are within our own life that we've created. There's this guy named Larry Waters, and Larry had a very healthy fear of ice, understanding how you should act whenever you're out on the ice on a frozen pond. And he and his wife one day had decided that they needed to go across the lake, the frozen lake, and as he pulled his truck up, he stopped at the edge of the lake where it was frozen, and he backed his ATV out because he and his wife are going to use that vehicle, being much lighter than his truck, in order to take them across the lake. He could see the path where other cars had recently gone through the lake in the snow, and he thought to himself, well, if these heavier cars can make it across, we should be okay. So he and his wife ventured out through to the lake, and as they got in the middle of the lake, one of the scariest things happened that you can imagine. As he heard and felt at the exact same time, the ice crack. And as he heard it, immediately as he heard that noise crack, they fell in, and the ATV flipped over in the water, and both of them are in the water, struggling to get out. Because, with the cold and the ice and the water, they did what every one of us would do, and they swam to the outside, and they're trying to grab hold of that outside edge and get themselves up. But the ice is so slick now with the water on it. And they're trying, and their clothes are getting heavier, and their shoes are getting heavier as they're absorbing water, and they're getting tired, and their limbs are getting numb as they're fighting their way out of this water. And there just came that point where Larry had that realization that I'm probably going to die here. And he swims over to his wife, Chrissy, and he goes up to her and just gives her a kiss and says, I love you. Because he's at that point where he's so tired of fighting that he knows that the only thing inevitable in his life now is probably his death. I've never been in that situation like Larry directly, but metaphorically I've been in there so many times when you're fighting and you're clawing your way out, and things just keep coming your way and getting thrown at you, and you think there's nothing else I can do, and finally you're just ready to give up. You're so tired of fighting. You're so tired of those situations that you're in. You're exhausted, and you just have no more fights left through you. When you wake up in the middle of the night and when you go through day after day just feeling like I'm a failure, feeling like I'm an imposter, feeling like I'm not who people think I am and I'm done fighting the battles of this world. And you come to this realization, just like Larry did, that you're completely and totally helpless. We've been trying to look in the series how we can rise up like a wolf. How we can rise up in different situations. And one thing I've noticed and discovered is it's not just ourselves that are these issues, but there's other wolves out there trying to get us. If we look at the book of Habakkuk, it talks about this. It talks about the enemy is coming to this nation of Israel. It says in chapter 1, verse 6 and 8, it says, I'm rising up the Babylons, the ruthless and impetuous people who sweep across the whole earth and seize dwellings not their own. Their horses are swifter than leopards, fiercer than wolves at dusk. Charles Spurgeon, whenever he's describing these wolves at dusk, says these are things that come against you in the night. This pack that comes against you, this assault that you have in life. Man, it reminds me of that old saying that maybe your grandma used to say or your mom used to say, ain't nothing good goes on at 2 a.m. in the morning. Because, I know the devil's working hard all day. He's working hard on you all day long. But there's something different about the night, The devil doesn't punch a clock. He's working overtime. And whenever you're there at home alone in your thoughts and going through, your situation, the devil's right there by you, man. He's working hard at night. And he's that wolf in the night that's coming, that thing that's coming around you. These evening wolves are coming your way in your life. These evening wolves are attacking you all the time. And it seems to be so much now in society. This idea that fear is just the new normal, and anxiety is just the new normal, and depression is just the new normal. And it's just so much a part of life for so many people now, that we just accept it as being okay. And, this depression that comes in your life, it's like this dark cloud and this downward spiral that just continues to go. You hate who you are because of what you do, and you do what you do because you hate who you are. And you just continue to get deeper and deeper into this situation. And we treat these issues, these illnesses, like we don't treat other ones that people have. There's like almost an embarrassment to going through these situations. And it's silly, like if you broke your arm, you wouldn't go around just saying, oh, I'm okay, man. No, I'm good. No, you'd go to the hospital, you'd go to the doctor, you'd get it fixed. But so many in these, these situations, we don't want to admit that. There's this negative connotation that goes with feeling this way. And so we just bury it down and we just hide it down. And these wolves keep coming after us every night. And we're just making ourselves worse and worse and worse. I've read so many self-help books, a lot of these Christian self-help books, and I can tell you how every one of them go. Man, the first 3/4 of the book, I'm like, I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you. And then you get to the end, and every one of them ends like this. All you need is a little more Jesus. You just need to love Jesus a little bit more, and everything will be fixed. But that's so much easier said than done. So much easier to just say, man, just love Jesus and all your problems will go away. But I do want you to hear this. I think this is super important that you understand that as many of these dark wolves that are coming into your life and as many of these issues and situations that are coming after you, so many times we create problems and make problems so much worse for ourselves than they actually need to be. In the state of fighting with yourself all the time and starting to push other people away, you make the situations worsen and heighten in what you do. See, what happens is we have choices in life. Jesus said you have the choice to worry or you have the choice not to worry. And there's this thing called cognitive horsepower that says that you can only move one direction at the same time. I mean, think about your car. Your car can go forward or it can go backwards. It can't go both ways simultaneously. And your brain works the same way. So when your focus in your mind is on your worry, when your focus of what you're doing is what you're worried about right now, then you can't be thinking about the joy, you can't be thinking about moving forward in your life. As a matter of fact, they've done a lot of tests that show that if the amount of worry that you have versus the score that you get on an exam directly correlate with each other. And the reason for that is because you're thinking about worrying and how you don't have the answer and how you're going to fail and how you're going to do bad. And the whole time you're putting your focus there, you can't recall the information that you learned for the test because your mind can only work one direction. Your mind can't go both ways at the same time. So what I'm really just trying to say is man, if you can get one huge thing out of today, is just realizing that worrying makes you worse. When you spend your life worrying, it just makes you worse. Because you're allocating and you're dedicating these finite skills that you have in your brain to the worrying side of it. Whenever you're thinking negative constantly, you're going to begin to act negative and react negative in situations, and all that worrying just ends up building up in our life. See, these dark wolves that come in our life, too many times we give them more than we should. We let them in our pack. We let them be a part of how we're running whenever we should be identifying them and fighting them and battling them. See, we've decided in our culture that worrying is just the new normal. Worrying is just what we do. And I know there's a lot of people that deal with this on a really high level. On a much higher level. And I'm not just trying to discount that or discredit that at all, because I think that's what happens too many times. You know, we dishonor that subject. We don't treat that subject the way that we really need to with people. We think that, again, if they just love Jesus more, it'll all go away. Or if I ignore it, then it'll go away eventually. And I'm not trying to say that at all, but we don't take and turn to the right places when we have this pain. As a matter of fact, I was looking into some stuff for the message today, and I saw this statistic that said 1 out of 5 Americans are addicted to some sort of illicit drug. Because that's what they're using to take this pain away. You know, whether it's something illegal or even something like prescription pain pills or whatever it is, you know, we're putting things into our body to get rid of this pain because we're not going to deal with it and face it head on. And additionally, of accidental deaths, drug usage is the highest percentage of people that die from accidental deaths. So that means more people die from drug usage than do from car accidents, than do from falling or drowning, or all those reasons why we would accidentally die. More people are dying from that usage because we're trying to self-medicate ourselves in these situations instead of facing our fears and facing the reality and facing these dark wolves that are coming into our life. 1 out of 10 Americans are actually on some sort of antidepressant. And I'm not discrediting the need and the benefit for antidepressants. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of you that I like a lot better because you take your antidepressants. So I appreciate that. But I'm just saying, we create these problems for ourselves. We're a world that just needs all this medication in order to fix it because we're constantly worrying, and that worrying, it makes us worse. But here's where the problem is. We're not facing those dark wolves head on. We're not facing those wolves that are coming into our life. And there's this enemy that's constantly on us, that we're constantly battling coming in here, that is just after us in every situation. So although it's important for us to think like a wolf and speak like a wolf and act like a wolf, that ain't enough, man. We got to fight like a wolf. You know, we got to stop just thinking and talking like it, but we got to begin to fight these dark wolves when they come in, because there's this enemy fighting within you. You know, he knows that God has a plan for you. He knows that God has some exciting stuff for you, and he doesn't want you to know that. So he's going to work overtime. He is the liar among liars. He's a thief. He comes in those moments when you're most vulnerable. And he knows that God has great plans for your life, but the devil doesn't want those to become. He's going to do everything he can in every situation because he is a murderer. He is a liar. He doesn't want you to dream. He doesn't want you to reach. But he knows that these plans that God has for your life, he sent Jesus to shed his blood for you, and he doesn't want you to live up to eternity in heaven with him and the happiness that God has for you. He wants to remind you of who you were. He doesn't want you to know who you can be, who you are, who God says that you are. But he wants you to sit there and remember the past and who the world says you are. But man, God wants you to know who he says you are, and that's why we got to stand up and we got to start fighting like a wolf. We got to stop sitting there and letting these dark wolves come in our life and just take over, man. We got to be tough. Teddy Roosevelt, man. Teddy Roosevelt, that's a tough dude right there. He died at the age of 60, and the vice president that was in office at the time, Thomas Marshall, actually said this about Teddy Roosevelt. He said, death had to take Teddy Roosevelt while he was sleeping, Because if he would have been awake, there would have been a fight. Because, man, this guy was one tough dude. You know, a couple of stories about Teddy Roosevelt. One time he had his boat taken by pirates, and that made him mad. So he went back and got a couple of his friends, and they went out for 8 days looking for these guys, and they found them, and they took the boat back, and they took their shoes away from them too. They took these guys and sent them off to jail, took them back and brought them over and took them to jail. Man, this guy was tough. When he was campaigning for his second term, the first time McKinley got shot, bang, bang, instant president when he gets capped, you know. So he just got the office. But he's like campaigning for this office in this second term. And he had to take trains across the United States. So right there, you know, that's a tough dude that's got to take trains all across the country in order to do these speeches that he has. There was no limousine riding, jet flying son of a guns back then. You know, it was just getting on a train and going. So anyway, he's on the train and he gets shot. And somebody's like, Mr. President, man, we got to get you to the hospital. And he said, no, take me to my speech. And that guy went to his speech, spoke for 90 minutes. For 90 minutes, and then he was finally like, okay, I think I'm done. You guys can take me to the hospital now. But man, that is a tough guy. And we got to be a fighter just like that. We got to understand that this world is full of wolves and things that are coming after us. And this world isn't a playground, but it's a battleground that we're in all the time. We got to stand up. There's people out there that we have to reach. There's things that we need to get out there and do and say in our community. And we can't be sitting here worried about things and using that finite energy of worry in ourselves. We got to get out there and we got to fight like a wolf. It's not peacetime, it's wartime. And when we realize that it's wartime, it changes your mentality. It changes how you think. It changes how you go out and act. And we're going to shift our attention here over to 2 Corinthians as Paul tells us, man, this is how we act as Christians. This is who we are in war. And this is the battles that we fight. In 2 Corinthians 10, starting in verse 3, it says this: For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretense that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. Man, as we go into today, I just ask that just you take a moment and just open your minds and open your heart, because I really feel like there's a lot of people that are going through the same stuff that I'm talking about right now. And then we just take that moment to say, God, what do you have for me today? Because, man, I think there's so much packed in here today that we can relate to. These dark wolves that are coming into our life that we're given into. And we're allowing them to drag us along. We've allowed them to become a part of our pack. And these things that we've become. Because what I've realized as we've been talking about wolves so much is, you know, wolves, they're out there too. And they got a lot of enemies just like we do. You know, wolves, honestly, they got a lot of stuff to deal with. If you think about a pack of wolves going out to get their hunt for the night, you know, they may be going after a buffalo or whatever. And even though we know the strength of the wolf is the pack and the strength of the pack is the wolf, we talked about that a few weeks ago. You know, that pack is powerful, but in the process of taking down that buffalo, sometimes wolves get kicked in the head. And I ain't never been kicked in the head by a buffalo, but I cannot imagine that would feel good. That'd probably take me out pretty hard. So we've got these prey that they actually are fighting against. And we have other predators that are out to get the wolf. But what was super interesting to me is the number one thing that kills wolves is other wolves. Other wolves that slip into the pack. And it's the same with us, man. We've got things, we've got these dark wolves that are getting into our lives and that are taking over our lives and consuming our lives, these evil wolves that we have. So what we're going to spend the rest of the day talking about how we can fight like a wolf. And the things that we need to do to stand up and fight like a wolf and quit letting these dark wolves into our lives, these wolves from dusk, get into our lives and begin to consume us. And how do we fight like a wolf? And if you're taking notes, which I would highly encourage you to do, the first thing is control the high ground. Control the high ground. See, in this text, Paul talks about these enemy camps. And if you want to get a stronghold on the enemy, the best place to do that is in the high ground. A few years ago, my parents were living in Sicily, Italy, and we had the opportunity to go over there. And one thing I found super cool and interesting is that they build these villages up on like a hill, and they've got these houses that are so close together. I got a picture of one of them up here. I didn't take that picture. I'm not that good of a photographer, but I did put the kind of Olin Mills oval around it, so it felt all 80s. But anyway, this is all over there like this, and I thought to myself, man, why would you build all these houses so close and these buildings so close together when you have just miles and miles and miles of vast area around you? And I actually asked that question because it's super weird to look at. It's not like something that we're used to looking at over here. And really, this is from a long time ago when you would build your village up on high ground because you could see the enemy coming. See, they understood if you take the high ground, because if you're down in a valley, that enemy can sneak up on you. But whoever has the high ground in a battle, they win. And there's a fight for the high ground in your life. There's a fight for the high ground in your mind and in your emotions, with addictions and habits and things that just get baked into your life. And as you continue to go on, I was having this conversation this morning about how as you continue to go through life, I'm 45 years old. Whenever I was 15, 45 was old. And now I'm 45 and I feel pretty young. But one thing about being 45 is my life is so routine. I got so many habits in my life now. And young people, I just encourage you, just watch those habits that you're forming because that's going to be who you are as you grow older. And habits has a bad connotation when you think about it. Not all habits are bad. I have bad habits and I have good habits. I have things that I do every day that are these good habits. But it's super quick and super easy to get in these routines that are destructive in your life. Or if you can get in the routines that are positive in your life and begin to get in that place that's the high ground, because some things we need are just sleep or hydration or simple things that we can do in our own life. We're praying for a miracle and we're praying for a breakthrough, and really the problem that we have is we need to take care of ourselves sometimes. I got this thing that I saw that's just a simple little thing that we can do for ourselves, that we can do to be on the high ground as we go into battle, and it's called 888. You can jot that down if you want to. Just the number 888, just like that, okay? What that means is 8 hours of sleep a night. 8 hours of sleep each, because when we don't sleep enough, our mind isn't alert and our mind isn't aware. And when we deprive ourselves of sleep, that's when those dark wolves slip in. And they start talking to you and saying stuff in your head as you're sitting there at night, not getting sleep. I know you're not going to get 8 hours every night, but if you get 6 one night, just try to get 9 the next night or whatever. Get it to balance out. But if we could just get 8 hours of sleep. Second one is 8 cups of water. What if your goal for the day was to have 8 hours of sleep and 8 cups of water? That may be, super close to where you are now. It may be really far. You may be drinking 3 cups of coffee, 2 Pepsis, and a LaCroix in the day. I don't know. But what if we could just replace that with water? Because when we can hydrate ourselves correctly and we get enough sleep, then we have this new clarity just going out into the world. Simple things that we can do. And the last one is 8 minutes with Jesus. What if we just gave 8 minutes a day to Jesus at the beginning of our day and at the end of our day? What if we spend the first 8 minutes in the Scripture or praying? And then we end our day the same way. Because how do you start your day now? Do you start it with social media and getting on there and seeing what's going on and seeing all this pain and torture and horrendous things in the world? How do we end our day? What did we binge watch before we went to bed and put into our mind as we went to sleep? We wonder why we can't sleep. Well, we can't sleep because we just watch zombies eating somebody's face before bed or whatever it is, But there's actually a lot of studies that are done that link binge watching TV shows with depression. And we're putting that into our minds very first thing in the morning or very last thing at night. But what if you just flip that around a little bit? What if you just spent those first 8 minutes with Jesus? You might think, I spend 1,176 minutes with Jesus a week. Well, praise God, you're holier than us. You're awesome. Congratulations. But, so many of us aren't. And we get so busy all day long. If we just had that 8 minutes on each end of it as how we started our day and ended our day, those 8 hours of sleep, 8 cups of water, 8 minutes with Jesus. How powerful and different could your day be if you just started it off with a worship song? Very first thing that you did, 888. You know, there's so many of us that are in this place where we're just praying for this intervention and praying for Jesus to come down and praying to make such a difference. But, you know, God's not going to do something for you that you can absolutely do for yourself. You know, God's saying, hey, you want an intervention? Your bed's right over there. Go sleep for a little bit. Or the water's right over there. Just go start putting these things in your body because God will show up for you. But man, he ain't going to take care of stuff that you have every ability to take care of yourself. We got to control that higher ground. Second thing we need to do if we're going to fight like a wolf is we need to fight fire by being on fire. We got to fight fire, the enemies that come your way, by being on fire ourselves. If we look back at Corinthians 3 and 4 again, I'm going to look at this in the Passion Translation, a little bit different of the scripture that we just read. It says, for although we live in this natural realm, we don't wage a military campaign employing human weapons, using manipulation to achieve our aims. Instead, our spiritual weapons are energized with divine power. You know, he's talking about this divine power. It's this weapon that only God can give you. You know, it's like that song Surrounded. I don't know if you've heard that, but you're going to get to in a couple weeks. We're going to start singing it. But it talks about, you know, this is how I fight my battles. I feel like I'm surrounded. I feel like I'm surrounded by the enemy, but I'm actually surrounded by God, and nothing can come through God. I don't care what enemies come my way, what dark wolves come my way, but I'm on fire already. Come on, say, you know, because when Satan comes to put a fire in your life, he can't burn what's already burning. If you're already burning, Satan, joke's on you. I'm already on fire, bro. You can't do nothing about it. So we got to be on fire. We got to get ready to live a life being on fire. We got to start our day each day with those 8 minutes. What about that? What if we started that in worship and with Jesus and we get on fire as the day starts off? Every day, you know, we got to get the Spirit in us and ready to go. And the Spirit's like gas in your car. You can't just put gas in your car and drive it forever. The gas is going to go away. It burns up, you know. So as we're on fire, we got to take every day and be like, you know, Jesus, come on, come with me today. Let's do this. Get the Spirit in you. Get on fire. Get ready to go. Get ready to go out there and face the world, face your fears, face the wolves, because you're on fire already as you're fighting this fire that's coming in your life with fire. Proactively, you're going out of your way to say, hey, I'm ready for today. Let's do this. Third thing that we got to do is we got to raise your voice. Raise your voice. You've been told your whole life to sit down, shut up, be quiet. And I'm saying quite the opposite. I'm saying if we're going to go out there and fight, if we're going to go out there in a battle, we got to learn how to raise our voice. We got to learn how to lift our head and howl. Tried to get you guys to howl a few weeks ago, and you didn't play along, so I ain't playing no more. But you know, we got to be ready to go, man. We're wolves. We're out there fighting. We got to lift our head. We got to howl in the thickest of battle, in the times that you're going into war, like you can't imagine. Jesus even did this. We saw this in his life. The time that he was going to war, one of his greatest battles in Gethsemane. You know, I mean, some of us think that Calvary was his greatest battle, but really Gethsemane, I think, was his greatest battle because that's when he accepted what was going to happen on Calvary. That's whenever he was ready for what was going to. When he went to the game, he was ready to play. But when he had to go accept it, man, that was one of his most difficult times. There's this amazing verse. It's a tiny little verse that you can miss if you're just reading that story and going through it. It's in Matthew 26, and this is between the Last Supper and Gethsemane. He did something really awesome in this time. Let's look at what happened here in Matthew. After the Lord's Supper, they'd got together, and it said, when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. After they sung a hymn. So they know they've got to go out to the Mount Olives, and the disciples are probably like, hey, Jesus, let's go. We got to get to Mount Olives. We got to get there. And Jesus is like, no, wait. Before we do that, we're going to lift our voice. We're going to sing, and I'm going to prepare myself for this battle that I'm going into. And when these battles are looming in our life, when we're getting in these situations, we got to understand that worship is our weapon. Worship is a weapon that we can go to. Worship is a weapon in this war that we face every day. And before we go into battle, before we get to these situations, take that moment with God, whether you're praying or singing or whatever it is, to use that worship and really stand up, lift up your voice, howl, shout, be ready to go as you go into battle every day. One of the greatest weapons that you have to fight off these dark wolves that you're going to run into all day is your voice, is that opportunity for you to take that weapon into battle. The fourth thing I have for you is keep showing up. Keep showing up. One of the coolest stories that I've heard about somebody that just kept showing up is this guy named Tim Leatherman, who invented the Leatherman. He actually got the idea when him and his wife were on vacation and the car kept breaking down, and he had a wrench and a pair of pliers and a Boy Scout knife, and he was, using the pliers and he'd switch out and use the knife and switch out and use the pliers, and we kind of take them for granted right now, these Leathermans, because they've always existed in our minds, but they didn't exist until they were made, And he just thought to himself as he was sitting there working on our car, he thought, note to self in life, make pliers, pocket knife combo. It seemed pretty easy to him. Why wouldn't somebody just put these together? So he decided to do this, but he kept trying and had failed attempt after failed attempt because he couldn't just get it all to function the way that he wanted to. And he was actually about 2 years into this process, and one day in his brother-in-law's garage, he just broke down crying, and he felt like he was almost just ready to give up on this that he kept doing over and over. But man, he kept showing up. And it was finally year 3 that he got these developed, and he got the patent to make these Boy Scout knife plier things. He didn't call them the Leatherman then. They were called Mr. Crunch. I guess because they crunch things. I don't know. And it'd be awesome if I told you he figured it out after year 3 and he sold 1 billion of them. But that's not how the story went at all. Because once he got these things made, once he had Mr. Crunch made, now you got to get somebody to buy it. And he went out to store after store, business after business. And they just kept saying, no, we're not interested. We're not interested. Year after year after year. As a matter of fact, he says that whenever he had sent this idea to Stanley, Stanley Tools that make different stuff, they actually sent him a letter back that said, no one would ever want to buy one of those things. So therefore, we're not interested either. But man, he just kept showing up. Getting doors shut in his face constantly. Nobody was interested. But he had this dream and this idea that this was going to be something that was going to be useful. And so it was finally after 6 years of doing this, he was just done fighting. He was done swimming in the cold water trying to reach his way out. He was just tired. And one of his friends kind of came and encouraged him along and says, man, you've come this far. You got to keep going. You got to keep showing up. You got to keep fighting that fight that you've been fighting. So it was 2 years later, it was 8 years after he finally came up with a patent on this thing that he went to this little store called Cabela's, and they ordered 500 of them from him. And the rest from there, as they say, is history. But think about that. He had to keep showing up for so many years of his life, over and over and over. And as I think about that story, I think, what are you about ready to give up on in your life? What are you just so tired of fighting for that you don't think the journey is worth it anymore? What dream are you beginning to lose your faith in? Because what I'm trying to tell you is a war, a fight, isn't just going out for one round and being done. But a war is round after round after round of bloody battle where you're out there, you're fighting, you're swinging, your teeth are getting knocked out, and that's what you're facing all the time. And when you give up before you've got to the end of the fight, when you give up before you're there, you got to keep showing up. You got to keep showing up every day. You got to keep telling those wolves, hey man, I'm going to fight. I got the spirit in me. I'm ready to go. I got fire. I got the high ground. Let's bring it. You keep showing up. The last thing I have for you today is never give up. Never give up. That story that we started with today about Larry and Chrissy, as we last left him, he was tired. He was just ready to give up. And he kissed his wife and had just decided that death was the only option for them at that point. And then for some reason, he remembered this in his head, that in his pocket, he had a Leatherman tool. And he takes that Leatherman tool out of his pocket and he stabs it in the ice and he uses it to pull himself up with every last bit of strength he has. And then he reaches over and grabs his wife, Chrissy, and he pulls her out as well, too. Man, you have that difficult, bloody battle that you're in. But when you never give up, I find it so interesting that in year 6 of Tim Leatherman's story, he didn't know what was going to happen with Larry and Chrissy because it hadn't happened. But he kept showing up and he didn't give up. And God knew the whole time what was going to happen. God knew what that was going to take because God is always there. God is always surrounding you. God is there whenever you're fighting your battles. God is that one constant thing because God is always showing up. God is never giving up. Man, that's why I love that song so much that I talked about earlier. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles because I'm surrounded by you. And I want to show you as you continue to fight this fight that you get into every day, that you are surrounded every day. You are surrounded all night long. These wolves are coming your way, but God is there on your side. And God is going to help you when you need it. You got to do what you got to do in your life to get there. But God's going to be there fighting those battles with you. And if we're going to stand up and we're going to rise up like a wolf, we got to realize that we're surrounded by God. And this is how I fight my battles. Not like the world does, but I fight them differently because I face this every day. We're in war, we're in battle, it's bloody, it's messy. God is there with us. And I want to pray with you guys as we close out today. Now I'll start off just a little bit different than we usually do. Every head bowed, every eye shut. I don't want to embarrass anybody. I know I do this a lot of times when we're talking about salvation or something, but I just feel like there's people in here today that are fighting those battles. People in here today that the wolves have come into your life and they're taking you down. And man, I just want that opportunity to pray with you. If that's you, you just slip up your hand so we can pray together. These wolves that we're battling, these things that are coming in our life, we're tired of fighting. We're tired of dealing with it. We're tired of day after day after day, all we go through in our lives, we're struggling, we're ready to give up, we're ready to throw in the towel. We're done with today. Amen. Gosh, man, I want to pray with you guys real quick. Pray for that power. Lord Jesus, man, I just ask that you put us on fire, that you remind us constantly that we're surrounded by you, that nothing else matters but you. As we go through each day, is that we can raise our voice, that we can keep showing up, that we know that drugs aren't the only option, suicide isn't the only option, these issues in life aren't the options that we have to face, but truly that we have other options in life, and we just need to reach out to you. Lord, I pray for these people as they go through life that you can remind them of that you can remind them that there are tons of people that love them and want to help them and want to support them in this church, inside of this church, outside of this church, as they go through life, Lord, that we don't need to look at these things like crippling diseases that we can't tell anybody about, Lord, but we're hurting, these wolves are in our life, and they've gotten here, and now it's time to get them out, Lord, and that you could just be an important, impactful part of that in each one of their life. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Yes, Jesus, yes. Lord, I pray as we go into this week that you can be in that first 8 minutes of our day, that last 8 minutes of our day, that we can remember the tools that we have to fight with and battle with as we go out there in this world. I pray this in your glorious name, Jesus. Amen.